Welcome to the Afikra podcast. My name is Mehdi Benchaabane. Today's episode is in collaboration with Qatar Foundation, and our special guest is Mehdi Benchaabane, who is the director of Qatar Academy Doha. Today's episode is exploring the role of artificial intelligence in education. Mehdi, welcome to Afikra.
Thank you, Mikey. Thank you for having me.
Before we get started, maybe it would be useful for you to just give a general sense of what you do on a daily basis or a sort of a week-to-week basis and how that has kind of changed with the advent of AI over the last year.
Of course, sure. As you said, I'm the director of Qatar Academy Doha. In other words, the head of school for a school that is about 2,000 students, 260 teachers and members of staff. It's the first school that Qatar Foundation opened 26 years ago. And it's one of the main schools that offers international education in Qatar. My work consists of leading the school, helping educators go about their daily job, which is giving the students the best learning experiences possible. And I always, put myself in a position of a helper and a facilitator of learning, and that's pretty much my day-to-day or week-to-week job. The advent of AI has certainly changed the way I look at education completely over the last couple of years. We made the pledge to lead in this area, and we decided as a school to take on artificial intelligence as a strategic direction for us. So what that means, obviously, we will discuss the details afterwards, but what that means in a nutshell is that we have decided to tackle what AI can do for education. How can it improve the experience of our students? How can it improve the work of our teachers? And what is it that we need to do to prepare the students for a world that is AI empowered? So that's, in a nutshell. There's a lot of thinking going on in a day-to-day basis here at QAD. And there are some more specific things that we can discuss along.
Yeah. You know, a couple of days ago, I was sitting with some friends and we were talking about the region and the future of the region. And they said something that is a retort you hear all the time. You know, in order to fix the region, we need to fix education. We need to go to the very beginning, right? And fix the educational system. As an educator who's leading an institution of 2,000 students, how does that actually feel when you hear people say that? Do you feel like you're part of a broken system, or do you feel like you're part of a system that doesn't need to be, fixed?
Oh, there are certainly problems with the system. Definitely there are issues. And I would say the issues with the system is how disjointed different elements of the systems are. I think it's more of a design and redesign process that needs to be taken. And each element has a work to do, has a job to do to obviously improve its own internal systems. But if you're asking me the question about the region and how to fix the region through education, I'm personally a believer in education being the way to do it. And I think that's the starting point. And that's also the conduit for the key concepts or the key ideas that the society wants to see as part of its vision. So if we want a region to emancipate, and if we want a region to say, okay, we want to be a society where we can be autonomous, we can be a key player in global conversations, and we can be places of obviously peace and prosperity, that translates directly to what we do in our schools. And I think that having the schools participate in these conversations will definitely help, fix the system, as you said.
So I'm curious. The reason why I asked that question is because we're talking about AI. AI is a tool. It's a technology. Usually technologies are incorporated into systems because they will either enhance, they'll speed things up, they'll improve, they'll create efficiencies, they'll minimize waste, they'll open new possibilities. but essentially they'll help us solve maybe the very same problem or solve a new problem that we were previously unable to solve. Um, I'm curious, what is AI doing for students? What is it actually adding to the student learning outcomes that previously we weren't able to achieve?
Right. Um, I, I wouldn't say it is currently helping the students the way it is pretending to, but it's definitely showing the potential to do so. So I will describe what we believe that AI can do and will be doing soon for our students. The number one thing I think is the personalization of learning. I think making sure that every student has an authentic and personalized learning experience that makes sense with what the student is as an individual, but also what this student aspired to be and what the society aspires for that student to become as part of a more global collective of people. And, we spent many, many years, and in this region particularly, looking for the silver bullet when it comes to education, and obviously attempts to adapt and import first. We started importing the education systems from elsewhere, and then we started adapting those education systems, trying to make them more relevant for the context. And it's a struggle when you do that. Now, what AI is promising to do is for us to take over the control over what the content and the curriculum should be, and how we teach as well, so that we don't have to think twice. So first we need to understand what other systems have put together, and then we have to adapt those systems locally. And most of the time, educators and systems of education don't have the resources, human and other types of resources, to actually come up with something that is well designed for the students. So really what I believe is that AI is going to empower educators who are willing to think from an authentic perspective. Like what is it that you want the students to be learning, and learning as a whole. I'm not just saying what content and what should the textbooks have, but really learning. What is it that you're trying to develop the student to become? And from there, having a tool that can act as a shortcut, basically. It helps you generate the closest thing to what you ask it to generate. So if you can prompt the system or prompt the AI empowered tool to give you something that you have clear in your mind, it will do it. And that, I think, is a starting point to a revolution. Hopefully, I'm a believer in the power of AI to change the game.
Okay, can you ground that in a specific example?
Sure.
Like, what is something that is actually happening in schools across the region or around the world, or only at QAD, that we can try to help us understand what that actually means?
Sure. So what our school follows the international baccalaureate systems, and it's a set of programs and curriculum that is concept based and inquiry based. So we do believe that students should learn through inquiry. They should be able to ask questions. They should be able to research an answer to the questions, and then develop their understanding through that inquiry process. For many years, we struggled applying some of these pedagogical principles in the classroom for all sorts of reasons, barriers that we can discuss later. But what a specific example for this is, where do you start? Where does a teacher start so that the students are put in a learning experience that leads to them engaging with the inquiry process and producing the type of learning that we want to see? And most of the time, the starting point is a textbook or a lesson plan that is developed using a certain tool. With the advent of EdTech, we have seen multiple platforms coming in, and we act as consumers of those platforms. So these are resources that we buy into, and then the teachers start with that as a starting point. Some teachers will go one step further and adapt those curriculum materials to their needs, to the level of the students, and sometimes, very rarely, to the context. But instead, we flipped the thing over, and we said, why are we doing all this? Why does a teacher need to start from a framed textbook or whatever the equivalent of a textbook is in modern time. Why don't we leverage or pull from all available resources and ask the AI tool to come up with a lesson plan that basically meets certain learning objectives? And that opens up a whole space of creativity for both the teacher, the school, the teams of teachers, but also the students themselves to take part in this. So what we're doing now is we're working with partners, and these are partners from the EdTech world who are willing to open up or change the way they approach this. Instead of them selling us a product, they're saying, we're bringing in the GPT-4 tools, and we're bringing in other capabilities. And what we want you to do is to tell us what exactly do you want to see in a lesson plan, in a unit plan.
Yeah.
And the teachers have in mind the learning objectives. They have a few ideas of what they would like to see incorporated. They have an understanding based on data of their students' levels. And if you feed this as a prompt into an AI platform, then what comes out is something that is genuinely matching what you asked it. Now, obviously, you can change your prompt to improve it, but the idea is now you're empowering the teachers to come up with something that is from scratch, matching the qualities or the targets that they want to see. It hasn't been uniformly applied across our school. Obviously, we're still looking at pockets of expertise and some early adopters and teachers who are willing to take risks with this. But what we see come out of it is there's no return. Once you have initiated a teacher to this way of thinking and this way of planning, then they will never go back to the consumer approach. Let's follow the written curriculum as it was written for us or by other people as well. So I think that's the number one at the moment, the concrete way of seeing teachers change the way they approach the planning and the preparation of their lessons. And obviously that translates directly to what the students are experiencing in the classroom.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like with this huge increase in computational power, like just the raw power of the current, GPT-4, the compute of it, it can power all this personalization, right? For individual students. I used to be a school teacher. And so the idea of being able to generate all these different personalized lesson plans, essentially like this term IEP, right? It's like it can create all these individual educational plans for individual students with just a touch of the button.
Correct.
Changing the intensity or the rigor of a math problem set, for example, right? So students A through Z in the classroom all get their own individualized homework based off exactly where they are. That's this like Narnia promised land, right? But with increased computational power, we can learn a lesson from manufacturing and understand how that may actually change the nature of what being a teacher is.
Mm-hmm.
How is that actually changing the profession of educators?
Mm-hmm.
Where all of a sudden maybe they are like closer to prompt engineers than they are anything else?
I would like to say that the near future will make true the teachers will be prompt engineers, and they will be master prompt engineers so that the students become prompt engineers, because I think that's an important development. The students will be and we've been saying this for many years. Students are more quick at adopting the new technology. And that means that once they understand how it works, they will be the faster prompt engineer. We're seeing it in our school here. We have a number of our students who are from grade 9 all the way to grade 12, who are way more advanced than most of our teachers when it comes to understanding what you need to give as a prompt to produce the results that you are expecting. But more importantly, with the way it transforms the teacher's role or job, for me, is that there's going to be a radical shift away from time and effort and concentration on the written curriculum, and more time spent on the social emotional aspect of the classroom. Like the classroom will become a space where, once the students have experienced the process of producing an essay, a poster, a solution to a problem, they will come to the classroom and we'll have a forum of conversations and human connections and interactions that the teacher will have to facilitate to leverage their learning. And then obviously the feedback that we will probably touch on later on, but the feedback element is also going to be a much more sophisticated process. You know, we're moving away from the teacher having to spend time to put a mark and a grade level on a piece of work. That has stopped. I mean, yesterday we basically put the last nail in the coffin of product-based assessment. Teachers should not spend a minute reading and assessing an essay written by ChatGPT. There's absolutely no sense to this. So for us to move away from product-based assessments and feedback to a viva voce kind of atmosphere, where really tell me about your product, tell me about your solution to the problem. Let's have a conversation about how is this going to move us forward as a society, as a collective. What are the implications? What are the ethical implications? What are the economical implications of your solution? So really shifting the focus of our teachers is what will change, obviously change their job, but also will have to change the way we are training them in the first place. And what does it mean for a teacher to become a teacher? I think that content expertise that was the number one condition for a teacher to become a teacher, whether it's content in the subject or also pedagogical content. Now it's developing the teacher as a master of social emotional learning. And that means they have to understand the dynamics of groups. They have to understand how to facilitate conversations, how debating works, and what is the cognitive engagement that is required from our students to be able to reach that level. Because that one-to-one, straightforward, here's a problem, here's a question, find me the answer. The teacher is no longer needed for that. At the beginning, it was all about the academic honesty element of AI. Teachers and parents were bothered by the fact that the grades that were given to students were not necessarily the grades that the students deserved, because some students would have used certain aid that other students did not use. And that kind of changes the perception of what grading is and assessment is, and how are we considering a student's advancement versus another student. Again, we're trying to get away from this, but it's still something that the parents care about. They do care about what is the education system labeling their children in terms of levels of learning, levels of achievement, and so on. And that forced us to really think about the framing of it. Like we have to be able to say to the parents, philosophically, we are giving feedback on this aspect of your child's learning, and you have a role to play to echo our principles in assessment, but also help us and help your child develop over time. It's not an easy conversation. It is not, because we went very fast, at least in my context here, we went very fast from parents in the primary helping their children with their homework to no homework, and then parents helping the children to integrate all the requirements of school, to now asking the parents to really take on the complexity of learning and be part of it, which is really hard for them. I mean, if it's hard for the educators who are professionals in this field, just imagine how parents are how hard the parents are finding it. So the conversation at the moment is really, what can we do to basically clarify what the school is trying to do and what we are valuing versus what is no longer important. Because if a parent finds that is important for a child to spend 3, 4, 5 hours doing repetition of certain types of exercises, And we are saying that that's something that they can do on their own if needed, and it can be done at a personalized level, then the mismatch can create some tension. So we're trying to ease those tensions and prepare the ground for let's say, a floor of understanding of what education means for us with these new tools being available. And then from there, we would take it to the next level. With the students, it's a little bit more advanced. What we did at our school is we gave the students the agency to start thinking and participating actively in the drafting of the new academic honesty policies of the school. So instead of telling the adults to go and write those policies and having that fear factor of trying to control and minimize the risk of cheating, for example, what we said is, let's give the students who know exactly what is available out there, let them think about the ethical use of AI and how can we make sure that they feel that it is helping them learn, but also allowing the feedback to be an authentic feedback. And it's fascinating to hear the students speak about this. So I'm going to pause here to see if you have any question, and then I can continue.
Yeah, I have a very simple question that I think is a complicated answer. What does it mean to cheat in school in the age of AI?
Well, that certainly has changed or has evolved, right? So that's a thing. I think if I flip the word cheating and I use the positive side of it, which is a value, and that value is honesty, right? If you talk about honesty as a value, if what I am asked to do is to produce a product, if the product is the aim, then I should be able to use any tool that allows me to produce the best product possible, because that's how the world works. If someone is asked to produce a phone, then it makes no sense to limit the tools that they use to produce that phone. So that honesty element has to do with what is being asked, but also has to do with the game and the rules of the game. So if you tell the students that I would like you to write this essay without the aid of any tool, so just a sheet of paper and a pencil, and those are the rules of the game. And there's a social contract between the teacher and the student that this is what is required. Then cheating or dishonesty will come about when the student goes outside of that contract. They break the contract. So they go and use a tool that the teacher has imposed on them. So honesty still exists as a value. The question is not, should we redefine cheating? I think cheating is clear. It's basically being dishonest, having a social contract that you are aware of and you sign up for, or you're signed up for, if in the case of younger children. But if you break those rules, then you are cheating. That's I think everyone is clear. Even our primary school students understand that. But the real question, the philosophical question, is why? Why are you constraining students to produce a quality product when they understand that if they do it through the tool, they will get a better product? And this is not a new conversation, Mikey. It's been. I mean, I come from a background of I'm a mathematician, and my early years in education were as a mathematics teacher, and I worked for many years in that transition of whether or not we should give the calculator to the students, and whether or not the calculator should...
And what type of calculator?
Exactly.
I was a math teacher
Exactly.
too.
Exactly. So we were debating. I worked with the IB for many years at the assessment level, and we were debating the use of the graphic display calculator, and we were seeing
TI-83,
the TI at the time, 80, 85, 87, 80. And then we were looking at the class-enabled calculators. So computer algebraic systems were what AI is now for us, because those calculators were giving not only the answer, but they were giving the steps to the answer. So that means that was a no-no. That was that's a forbidden tool, because that defeats the purpose.
Yeah.
But it is still a relevant conversation. And I think AI is just accelerating this and expanding the conversation across the education system. But we definitely need to move away from a product-based assessment and judgment of students' learning, because it's not a good proxy of what they actually can do and how they think.
Yeah. Okay, so you're running a school, Qatar Academy Doha, right? Um, which, spoiler alert, is in Qatar, which is not in Silicon Valley, and it's not in New York, and it's not in London, it's not in Paris, and it's not. It's also not in Beijing or in Singapore. Um, but a lot of these AIs are coming from those places and are written by people from those places. Um, Ministries of education, independent school systems go to organizations like the IB, go to very long lengths to root their curricula with very specific agendas, very specific agenda, very specific point of view, rooted in their locality, rooted with things that they want to include in curricula, things that they don't want to include in curricula, all these different preferences. None of the tools that I know of, none of the leading tools that I know of are powered by these local organizations. Maybe they are slapped on. There's a skin that's plugged into GPT-4 or plugged into Google Bard that's coming from the States, but none of them are actually using weights or algorithms that are, or exclusively data sets coming from the Arab world. How does that change the way you are thinking about how AI can be integrated into schools that are based in the region specifically and are teaching students from the region?
That's a brilliant question and a tricky one because it has multiple facets to it. Let me tackle this question from maybe two angles, and maybe there's a third one that will come to me afterwards. But the main angle for me is, you're right. It is a dilemma when you think of it. When we are in a world where the technology and the advancement in technologies is polarized and concentrated in these talent hubs. And when the advancement is so rapid and fast that the other parts of the world are just following and hoping to reach an understanding of what's going on. It is a tricky one to say that we are at the forefront of anything if the underlying technology is being cooked and developed elsewhere. One thing that this region I know for sure is realizing is that, for example, when it comes to the Arabic language, and since AI has a lot to do with language models, it's not just a matter of sovereignty, but it's also a matter of culture. It's a matter of accessing the world around us. Silicon Valley will not put as much effort into training their systems with the Arabic content. I think that's something for us to think about and to develop. And I know that there are initiatives here in Qatar and neighboring countries that have been working on developing those models. So that's a realization that came early on in the process, and it will take education with it, but I think it's something that is happening. The second angle is this idea of partnership. So the ed tech capabilities that do stem from innovations that are happening in Silicon Valley and other countries, they basically, in my perspective, they are developing a hammer. So basically, once you develop or you invent a hammer, and the hammer is out there, it's out there. I mean, people will use that hammer to build all sorts of things, but that's the hammer. Who knows where the hammer comes from, by the way? If you ask anybody, who invented the first hammer? Who cares? No one cares. Okay, it's gone. Now it's in the public sphere as a hammer, and the hammer is being used to develop solutions that are much more sophisticated than the tool itself. This is different from the conversation about computer. I see your inquisitive.
It's fundamental. Yeah, it's fundamentally different. It's fundamentally different.
Right. So
go ahead. Continue.
Right. So for me, I think, and I was watching one of those, just recent conversations. As a matter of fact, it was at the Stanford University, and there was a conversation around this idea that programmers are realizing that AI is shifting the importance from themselves to the subject matter experts. So by having AI tools, and I'm not talking about ChatGPT, I'm saying AI in general, and even the tools that are not yet in the hands of the layman, but once those tools are there, it's solving a problem in life is no longer giving control to the programmer, to the coder, to the person who knows how to develop machine learning. It's giving the power to the subject matter experts, because that tool becomes a tool that that expert knows how to manipulate. Now, they may not know how it actually works from within. They may not know but once it's democratized and it's out there, it becomes essentially a hammer that can be leveraged to build all sorts of structures based on that subject matter experts' ability and creativity and so on. So I am in a way, at least in education, I am in a way hopeful that we reach that point quickly in the next few months, actually, where we start seeing this as a fundamental tool that is in the hand of someone who's capable of building something genuine.
Yeah, I don't share your optimism, and I'm in that way, in this specific way. I'll tell you why. Because I don't think hammer is actually a good analogy. I think that maybe a better analogy is that it is. Let's use hammer for a second. It's not only the IKEA toolbox, right? Which is like very clear and small, and everyone has an IKEA toolbox. That's that orange plastic one. But it's also IKEA itself. It's the furniture itself. So previously, if you wanted to buy furniture, you'd go to a local furniture maker and they would make the furniture in the style of furniture locally, whether it's a diwan or whatever. And they would slowly build it, and it would be a laborious process and maybe not perfect and not as good as furniture that you would find in other capitals somewhere in the world, but built from local knowledge, right? IKEA builds all these stores all over the world, and you can just go get the box and bring it home, and you think you're building it yourself. There's an illusion that you yourself are creating it, and they have just given you the tools for your own ingenuity and your own creativity. But the truth is that it is so brilliantly made for you, pre-engineered, pre-designed, without local knowledge, without incorporating local knowledge and sovereignty, as you said, that it does strip away something, right? And there is an illusion of it being a sort of agnostic tool, right? A valueless tool. Yeah.
So let me engage with you. Thank you for poking the bear. This is a good one. You're right to a certain extent. And what we saw in the first, let's say year, I think it's around January that things became so loud. I'm only using the lens of education because I'm not an expert in other fields. So, although I'm interested in seeing what AI is doing to other fields, but really in education, it's something that I'm focused on at the moment. So let's say since January, we saw something that we've seen before. This explosion of learning management systems and platforms that are marketed towards schools, and they use everything that schools want to see, the colors, the forms, the manipulatives, everything. And they packaged it so that the schools look at this as an easy way to access AI tools. And what they do is they do the IKEA approach, which is subscribe to our platform. And what you will get is an easy way for your teachers to go and navigate the AI tools so that they can produce this result at the end. It was appealing for most schools because that's what they are used to. They are used to seeing the shifts, for example, from the hard textbook to the online textbook to the what we call the module-based or modular platform. Now,
Mm.
we did not subscribe to any of them, even though we are a school that has more or less the strategic direction and the resources to be able to go and try those. I mean, it's not a problem for us to subscribe to a platform, but we haven't. We did incubate them, and we had some of our colleagues to look into what actually is being done. But we understood quickly that that's not what we mean by AI. If you're going to subscribe to IKEA, if you say to yourself, you're going to purchase your furniture from IKEA, and then you're going to have fun building that furniture, and then pretending that you're a carpenter, then that's exactly what happens. What I am seeing in AI is not basically cutting the middleman. The ed tech, and this is a dangerous thing to say for the ed tech companies, is that if they keep their business model the way they used to have it before, if they still think that they can basically be a conduit through which education uses the capabilities of AI, then they will lose. And I think they already reached saturation in a very short amount of time. I think they're already showing signs of despair because students and teachers are not taking on the quote unquote craze that is happening at the moment. But what I hope to see is solutions that are built in the school with the help of developers and with the help of those who have the expertise, but that are done by the educators. So the hammer becomes almost customized at school and then improved over time. And we're doing it in fact, I don't want to mention the partner at the moment because we're still working around the terms and conditions. But basically we have connected our school with an organization that comes out of Silicon Valley actually, but that are interested in developing something that is from the ground up. So grassroots solution that our teachers are going to be leading. And their interest from this is obviously to have the Arabic data to train their systems, but also, so it's a win-win situation. So it's not a commercial relationship. It's you get our data so that you can perfect your tool, and we get the tool that is doing the things that we want to see being done. I don't know if all the schools will be able to have access to such relationships, but I think there's a new business model that needs to be explored by these companies.
Okay. Help me understand, or help us understand how the current AI tools fall short and why they fall short when it comes to Arabic language education.
Well, one thing, let's not forget that ChatGPT, again at the center of all the buzz, has been trained on the English language, and then the fact that it allows us to prompt in Arabic and get the Arabic, it's using translation as a mechanism. So that's that.
Is it actually? So I'm curious about this. So is it like is the AI, you type in a Arabic prompt, right? One of your students types in an Arabic prompt about how to some biology about photosynthesis, right? There's some Arabic prompt. What is photosynthesis in Arabic? Is it literally generating it in English and then like feeding it through the equivalent of Google Translate and then doing that? Or is it reading Arabic textbooks, essentially using Arabic textbooks or Arabic data sets to generate the response?
I am not sure what's happening with ChatGPT specifically, but my understanding from what I've heard, we just came out of the WISE summit, and I discussed this with a few specialists who were there. My understanding is that the training that took place did not have the amount of data that would perfect the Arabic language to be the source of the connection between the input and the output. So it's mainly doing the translation. And if you look at the Google Translate itself being an AI tool. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been there for a while. It's been improving over time, but you can see how far we are from the level of accuracy in the language. That's one challenge, and I think it's not just Arabic. I think all non-Latin languages are now looking at ways to increase their chances to have the tool do the things that they want to see happening. There's another thing about the Arabic, and that's specifically related to the Arabic itself, and that is the difference between the spoken Arabic and what we call the modern standard Arabic. So when you look at the Arabic texts, they are written in modern standard Arabic for the most, and the spoken language is detached from that language. And then if you factor in the multiple dialects, and everyone who speaks Arabic would tell you that, someone from my part of the world, which is I'm Algerian, so I'm on the western side of the Arab world. When we speak in our dialect, it's not as easy to understand for someone who's living on the other side of the Arab world, and that's not as wide a gap as you would see in English, for example. So that adds a bit of a conundrum for those who are working on the Arabic language and the speech to text capabilities. But I think we're making advancements in this. I think there are compromises from the Arab world in ourselves. We are looking at ways to make it easier for us to speak our own language and for our students to access the language. So that's a role that we have to play. But also there's a smarter way to go about training those AI machines, and also look at different ways to approach the input output capabilities of those machines. So, and then the company that I mentioned that we are about to partner with, that's what they're doing. So they're basically trying to solve the problem from a different perspective. They're not trying to do what ChatGPT did. I hear a lot about, there are different approaches to AI. There's the approach that basically starts with having a large amount of data that is trained and pre-trained, and then having the tool ready to be deployed. And there's the approach that you put the tool in the hands of those who are willing to use it, and that will generate, just like the Tesla, for example, that will improve itself intrinsically. So that there are different approaches. Again, as you can hear me speak, I am hopeful that things are moving in the right direction with Arabic.
So I feel like if I were to speak to all these different constituents that we talked about earlier, right? A lot of them, including bystanders like myself, right? A lot of them would be sort of wringing their hands and furrowing their brow and rubbing their head saying, "Ooh, what is AI going to do to the future of education? What is going to happen to all these kids?" Right? There's a concern, hopeful concern, pessimistic concern, but definitely concern, right? You're surrounded by students. Do you think the students are worried about this at all? Do they think that this is this monumental shift, or are they just like, this is just another day?
If you're asking me specifically about AI, I don't think they are worried. I think they are seeing this as a huge opportunity.
Everyone else is worried about them, but they're like, don't worry about it. We're fine.
I mean, I was talking to the president of our student council the other day, and we were talking about this, and they're worried that we are too slow in allowing them to leverage the tools, and not just AI, but all tools. They worry.
Yeah, he's like, please, before my high school, let me use it before my my test.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they are worried that we are going to put artificial hurdles in place that they don't see the reason. Now, what I am concerned about is, and we're living in a troubled world, and I think our students understand that, and they understand how complex the problems are, and how sometimes as individuals we feel powerless when we look at these big problems. My worry is that with AI, we have the risk of missing the opportunity to develop a moral compass that allows the students to navigate not just the tool, but what to do with the tool later on. And I think this is, for me, this is the highest risk. If we embrace any new innovation too fast, by just focusing on what it can do and not having our attention focused on how do we get the students to go through that moral development that allows them to at least know what the difference is between right and wrong when it comes to making the next step. And I think this is where education can fall short. That's my biggest worry. My biggest worry is that and by the way, I am saying this in relation to AI, but we have failed on this chapter for decades now. And that's, if you ask me, that's something that we need to blame on the detachment of education from moral development and moral education. I think this idea that the school is there for academic development and it should be immune. Students should be immune to values-driven education or the understanding of those human virtues that we want to see them embrace. That muscle has atrophied. It's a muscle that we didn't work over time, and now that we need it, we don't have it. It's just so hard for us to develop that muscle again. We don't have teachers who have an understanding of how that works. We have buzzwords. We are talking about, social and emotional learning as almost a kumbaya word, and it's not anchored in that morality that is needed for us to tame the machine. If I can use that kind of analogy, is for us to be able to say, I am a human and I have my own human intelligence, and this is a powerful tool that will augment my capability, but I'm in control and I know what I need to do next based on something that gives me that sense of direction.
This idea that what you're describing in so many ways is essentially the humanities, right? You're talking about like, we need to return back to the humanities. The core tenets of teaching critical thinking and teaching and creativity and not focusing on the tool itself, but understanding on how to express yourself with precision and express yourself with fluidity and open up the channels and understand how you're feeling, how to connect with your neighbors and citizens and the global community. This is the nature of the humanities, right? And in many ways, I think like since the Industrial Revolution, a lot of this stuff has sort of lost its way and been filtered out of schools because of the technical challenge of teaching so many people, right? Like when you have 30 kids in a classroom, you're like, everybody shut up and go to page 35. We're on paragraph 2, right? And so in many ways, we have this ability to overcome that technical challenge of 35 kids in the classroom with these personalized tools, but only if it's actually paired with a focus on the humanities and arts and creativity and all these different things. I'm obviously very passionate about this because it's the nature of the organization I'm running. But for you're speaking to other school leaders, other heads of schools across the region, who are your, in many ways, your sort of collaborators. Do you feel like there's also a pivot to the arts and a pivot to the humanities? Or is it like, oh, well, we just need everyone to learn how to code, and everyone just needs to learn how to be a prompt engineer and just do these very sort of in vogue technical skills?
I mean, if the school is still going in that direction, then they're making a huge mistake. That's the opposite direction. And I think if anything, we learn from really paying attention to what the conversations around AI are, is that we need to shift away from that thinking. It's having students in silos and trying to get them focused on the technical development or the technical skills as a school is a waste of time and energy. And I think exposing them to more real life type of issues and problems that require the thinking that you mentioned require the artistic and creative thinking, and also requires the interdisciplinary nature of learning. I think that is the way to go. And I think schools who are better placed are schools that have already embraced this idea that you're not teaching subjects and you're teaching students interconnected skills. And I think that's a curriculum framework in many ways. Schools are slow to advance. I mean, it's difficult for you to go to a school now that is part of let's say, a Ministry of Education type of structure. And I'm not saying in this country, but in any country. It's very difficult to go to that school and say, well, you know what, let go of all the controls of your curriculum and just, open up the connections between subjects and teach students to make those connections as they solve problems. That's a utopian approach. In France, the education system is called the mammoth for a reason. It's very heavy and very slow to move. And that's it. That's in a Western country that has been trying to change the way they run schools for a long time. Speaking from not just from a QAD perspective, but also the directors, as you said, the directors of schools that are around me, whether it's part of Qatar Foundation or schools here in Qatar, there are two competing forces at the moment. One, and I have a lot of trouble with this, is this idea of schools wanting to embrace the next shiny thing, because that's how they will show that they are cutting edge when it comes to technology, for example. And I think that has always existed and will continue to exist. And that's also systems of education, not just schools themselves. This idea that, we bought this new device. We are developing our curriculum around this new tool and so on. And at the same time, we're seeing things like, countries countries like Sweden and Finland and so on, going back to pen and paper and removing the device from the classroom altogether, where they realize that that's not necessarily helping the learning along the way. So there's that conversation, that push towards the new shiny thing, whether it's a material or a way of teaching and learning. The second part is the school leaders are wondering about their own systems. What we are, we're using a blueprint across all of our schools. It's the industrial age blueprint. It's the classroom of 30, as you mentioned, or a little bit less, a little bit more. It's the one teacher to a number of students ratio. It's hiring a number of teachers in different disciplines. It's structuring the timetable, and all of that is so ingrained in how schools are operating that it seems like we need to start challenging that blueprint. We really need to rethink what a school looks like. It doesn't have to be a complete revolution where teachers are obsolete or like some of the crazy stuff that we hear nowadays, but it can be the creativity that you mentioned. When we open up the door to creative ideas, it has to also go into rethinking the blueprint of our schools.
Well, Mehdi, thanks so much for sharing your time and your perspective with us. I really appreciate it. This is a big topic for sure, one that is going to only get bigger. And so it's nice to be able to have an opening this conversation with you for sure.
It's been a pleasure. And let me tell you something. We need more of you. And what I mean by that is that we need people who are willing to take some time and prompt educators and people in education to...
No pun intended.
I think this whole interview was full of puns, so no problem. But let me tell you that this is how we can get the thinking and moving these ideas around, because we're not necessarily participating in the type of conversations that will lead us to be ready for the next step. We're still reactive, and that's not a good thing for education to be in. So I think you're doing a great job, and thank you for the time you spent with me.
Thanks so much. And if there are other educators out there listening who are interested in this conversation, please reach out. This is going to very much be a regional and global movement to try to figure out where we're going. So all hands on deck.
Indeed.
Mehdi, thanks so much.
Thank you, Mike. All the best.